Thanks for joining us today. I hope you're doing well. Come on with us to James chapter 5. James 5 at verse 10 says, My brethren, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord as an example of suffering and patience. Indeed, we count them blessed who endure. You have heard of the perseverance of Job and seen the end intended by the Lord, that the Lord is very compassionate and merciful. And I just thought that was a wonderful picture. You have seen the end intended by the Lord. Sometimes we forget the end, and we get caught up in various things. I want you to think about a few ideas from James. In James chapter 1, at verse 2, it says, My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. And it talks about the good things that can come from the trials. And what happens is we get caught up in the trials and the tribulations of life, when we need to keep our eyes focused on the good things that the Lord intends. We have seen the end intended by the Lord. In verses 9 and 11, it talks about the poor man and the rich man. As it says, Let the lowly brother glory in his exaltation, but the rich in his humiliation, because as a flower of the field he will pass away. Sometimes we get caught up in riches. Perhaps it is greed, coveting things that we do not have. Perhaps it is trusting in riches, things that we do have. But we get caught up in riches, and we need to see the end intended by the Lord. And we need to think about spiritual matters and set our mind on heavenly things, if you will. Now in chapter 2 at verse 14, it says, What does it profit, my brethren, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can faith save him? And the answer to that is no. Sometimes we get caught up in faith, and we need to see the end that is intended by the Lord. And we need to make sure that we're not stopping short. The next one on our list is similar to that. Over in chapter 4 at verse 17, it says, Therefore to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. Certainly we want to teach people, and we want to make sure we know ourselves what it is we need to be doing, but we need to make sure that we are not getting caught up just in the knowing. We need to see the end intended by the Lord. The last one on my list, and I'm sure there's others, at verse 6 it says, God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. Sometimes we get caught up in grace. We get caught up in grace, and sometimes we put the cart before the horse, if you will. He gives grace to the humble. We need to make sure we're not caught up in grace and forget about that last part. We need to make sure we're humbling ourselves, otherwise we don't get to enjoy the Lord's grace. Remember the end intended by the Lord. He is very compassionate and merciful. Hope you enjoyed this study. Hope you have a good day. Be a blessing to others. Hope to see you tomorrow.